The desert stretched far and wide under a burning sun. Waves of heat rose from the sand, making the horizon shimmer like water. Dan walked slowly, his boots sinking into the soft surface with every step. His ship was far behind him now, resting at the edge of a canyon, hidden under a camo net. He carried only a water pack, a lantern, and a small scanner that hummed in his hand. For weeks, he had searched this alien world. The local people had told him stories of an ancient city buried beneath the dunes. They spoke of gold walls, giant pillars, and a throne no one was allowed to see. They said the place was cursed. Anyone who entered never returned. To them, it was forbiddance, a place only whispered about during long nights around the fire. But to Dan, the word forbiddance was a challenge. He had grown up hearing tales of explorers, of humans who crossed seas, climbed mountains, and walked on moons. Humanity was always told what they could not do, and yet they kept moving forward. Now it was his turn. The scanner beeped and flashed a signal. Dan paused, holding it up. Beneath his feet, something dense showed on the screen. A shape. Not natural to sand. His heart beat faster. He bent down, pushing the sand aside with his hands. Soon, hard stone appeared. Brushing it off carefully, he revealed lines carved into the surface symbols, glowing faintly in the sunlight. He ran his fingers across the markings. They were smooth, precise, and older than anything he had seen before. He pressed a button on the scanner, recording the find, and spoke softly into his recorder. Stone structure detected. Coordinates locked. Possible entrance point to buried ruins. The wind shifted, carrying dry air across the plain. Dan stood and looked around. The desert seemed empty, but he felt eyes watching him. He turned sharply and saw a figure standing on a dune. It was tall, cloaked in fabric, holding a staff. The figure did not move closer, but Dan could tell it was one of the locals. They had been following him for days, warning him not to continue. He raised his hand to signal peace, but the figure only lifted its staff, pointing at the ground. Then it slowly shook its head. Dan understood the meaning. Do not open what is buried. Do not disturb the throne room. Dan sighed. He respected their fear, but he could not let it stop him. He looked back at the stone and pressed against the carvings. A section of sand gave way, sliding down into a gap. Slowly, an opening appeared, wide enough for him to crawl through. A breath of cool air rushed out, carrying with it the scent of dust and something metallic. His lantern lit up, casting a warm glow on the walls inside. Golden streaks reflected faintly in the dark, like veins running through stone. He leaned closer, fascinated. The stories were true. There was gold hidden here, not as treasure, but as part of the very walls. He pulled out a rope from his pack, tied it around a stone, and lowered himself down. The air grew colder the deeper he went. The walls around him were carved with scenes of people, strange, tall figures with long arms and flowing robes. Some looked human, others alien, yet they stood together in the carvings, as if part of the same empire. At the bottom, his boots landed on solid ground. He stood in a long corridor stretching into the darkness. His lantern light touched pillars that rose high above him, their tops lost in shadows. Dust hung in the air like mist, disturbed by his movement. Every sound echoed, from his breathing to the soft scrape of his boots. Dan felt a chill, but excitement grew stronger inside him. He knew he was the first human to stand here in countless years. The locals might call it cursed, but to him, it was discovery. He walked slowly down the corridor, letting his lantern reveal more carvings. Scenes of battles, of ships in the sky, a throne shining in light. The deeper he went, the more the golden lines glowed faintly, as if the walls remembered the presence of life. His hand brushed against one, and for a moment he thought he felt warmth. Then he heard a sound. A low hum, soft but steady, like a machine waking from sleep. He stopped, holding his breath. The lantern flickered as if reacting to unseen energy. Dan swallowed hard, but forced himself to keep moving. At last, he reached a massive set of doors at the end of the corridor. They stood tall, higher than any gate he had ever seen, made entirely of solid gold. Every inch was carved with symbols and figures. The surface shone even in the faint light, as though it created its own glow. Dan stared in silence. This had to be the entrance to the throne room, the place everyone feared, the place everyone said no one could return from. His heart pounded. He placed his hand against the cold surface of the golden door. It was smooth, flawless, yet he thought he could feel it vibrating under his touch. Behind him, the desert was safe, familiar, and filled with warnings. But before him stood mystery, history, and perhaps danger. Dan took a deep breath, eyes fixed on the shining door. He whispered to himself, "This is it. This is why I came." And with that, he prepared to enter the forbidden throne room of gold. Dan's fingers pressed against the golden door, feeling its cold, smooth surface. The light of his lantern reflected off the carvings, showing strange figures frozen in action. His mind raced with excitement. This was what he had dreamed of, proof of an ancient empire, untouched for centuries. But as he prepared to push the door open, a shadow fell across the corridor behind him. He turned quickly and saw a figure emerge from the darkness. It was the elder he had glimpsed from the dunes. Rava. Her cloak shimmered faintly in the lantern light, and her staff tapped softly on the ground. Her eyes were serious, calm but unyielding. "Stop," she said in a clear voice. "You must not enter." Dan stepped back slightly, surprised. "Why?" he asked. "I have come all this way. I need to see it for myself. The throne room is not just legend. I know it exists, and I have to discover it." Rava shook her head. "Legends are born for a reason. That room is not for the living. It tests those who enter. Many have tried, and none returned. The throne room of gold is more than a treasure. It is a challenge to your heart, your mind, and your spirit. Humans may not understand its purpose." Dan felt a flicker of doubt, but pushed it away. "I understand risk. Humans have faced worse. We climb mountains taller than clouds. We dive deeper than the oceans. If we can do that, we can face a room made of gold." Rava's eyes softened, but her voice remained firm. "This is not about courage or strength. The ancient empire built the room to see who is worthy. It measures not your weapons or your will, but your choices, your honesty, and your respect. Many who entered were clever and strong, yet failed because their hearts were not ready. Gold cannot be claimed by greed." Dan frowned. "So you're saying I could fail?" "Yes," Rava said. "And failure comes with a price. You will not return unchanged. You may walk out, but you may carry burdens your mind cannot bear. The room does not forgive." Dan looked at the golden door again. It called to him like a voice in his head. He could almost hear the whisper of the past, of the empire that built this place. His curiosity burned brighter than fear. "I have to try. Humans are not known for stopping when something is forbidden. If I don't do this, I will always wonder. I will always regret it." Rava sighed deeply and lowered her staff. "Then know this, human. I cannot stop you, but I will give you guidance. When you enter, do not reach for the gold. Do not follow what tempts you. Observe, learn, and resist the urge to take. The room respects the mind that sees clearly, not the hands that grab." Dan nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words. "I understand. I will be careful." Rava studied him for a long moment, then spoke again. "The corridor you see now is only the beginning. Ahead are halls filled with carvings, machines, and illusions. They are alive in their own way. They will try to confuse you, test you, and tempt you. Trust your heart and remember what it means to be human. That may be your greatest strength. Dan looked down at the golden door once more. It seemed less like a barrier now and more like a promise of answers. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Thank you, Rova. I will remember what you said." Rava nodded, stepping back. Her presence faded into the shadows of the corridor. Dan felt a chill as the silence returned. For a moment, he wondered if she would try to stop him one last time. But the desert elder stayed behind, leaving him to face the unknown alone. He placed both hands on the door. The carvings beneath his fingers were warm now, almost like the room was alive and aware of his touch. Slowly, carefully, he pushed. The golden door creaked, but did not resist. A narrow opening appeared, revealing darkness beyond, dust dancing in the lantern light. Dan stepped forward, and the doorway seemed to swallow him into shadow. The air inside was cooler, carrying a faint metallic scent. The corridor beyond twisted, slightly, lined with walls covered in more golden carvings. Figures of humans and aliens together in battles, councils, and celebrations stretched as far as his light could reach. His heart pounded with a mixture of fear and excitement. Every step echoed, reminding him that he was alone, yet not quite. Alone. Something watched, something ancient. He remembered Rava's warning about temptation. He kept his hands at his sides, resisting the urge to touch every shining surface. He studied the carvings, imagining the lives of the people who made them. Humans like him, aliens like Rava's people, all working together in a civilization. Long forgotten. Suddenly, a faint hum vibrated through the floor. His lantern flickered as a soft golden light ran along the carvings. The walls seemed to shift slightly, not physically, but in the way that a dream can move. Dan stopped, steadying himself. He could feel the test beginning. He whispered quietly to himself, "I am ready. I will not let fear stop me. I will face whatever is ahead with my mind and heart open." The throne room waited beyond, silent but alive. Dan stepped forward, deeper into the golden corridor, knowing that every choice now mattered. Every decision could lead to discovery or danger. The Forbidden Room was no longer a legend. It was real, and he was inside. The golden corridor stretched endlessly before Dan, its walls glowing faintly in the light of his lantern. Each step echoed loudly, bouncing off the carvings that covered every surface. Figures of humans and aliens stood frozen in battle and peace, their expressions captured in timeless gold. Dan could feel the weight of history pressing on him. He knew that each step brought him closer to the heart of the throne room, but also deeper into its unknown tests. He moved cautiously, his eyes scanning the walls for hidden doors or symbols. The hum he had felt earlier grew louder, vibrating softly through the floor beneath him. Dust rose from the corridor, swirling in golden light like tiny stars in a dark sky. He held his lantern high, illuminating a set of steps that led down to a wider chamber. The chamber opened into a vast hall. Pillars of gold rose from the floor to the ceiling, and the walls were carved with more scenes than Dan could take in. At once, ships flew in the sky above human and alien armies, and in the center of some carvings, a throne stood, larger than anything he had ever imagined. He could sense the importance of this place. The room was alive, in a way, with the memories of those who had built it. A strange vibration ran through the floor, and the light from his lantern seemed to react, casting shadows that moved almost like living shapes. Dan stopped and listened carefully. He could hear whispers, soft voices speaking in languages he did not know. They were not angry or welcoming, simply observing. He felt no threat yet, but he knew the room was watching him, testing him, reading his intentions. He took a deep breath and reminded himself of Rava's warning. Do not take the gold. Observe, learn, and resist temptation. Dan kept his hands at his sides and moved forward. The carvings seemed to shift slightly as he passed, telling stories of victory, loss, and courage. It felt as if the room itself was alive, showing him the past and hinting at the trials ahead. At the far end of the hall, Dan noticed a doorway partially hidden behind a tall pillar. He approached carefully. As he drew near, a soft light emanated from the opening. The doorway led to a narrow corridor lined with intricate patterns. Each pattern seemed to pulse faintly, almost like it was breathing. Dan could feel the pressure of something testing him. He slowed his steps, focusing his mind, trying to remain calm. The corridor twisted and turned, guiding him deeper underground. At points, it opened into small chambers filled with golden statues. Some statues held weapons, others held books, orbs, or other objects. Dan understood that these were not traps but lessons. Each statue represented a choice, a value, or a moment from history. He studied them carefully, trying to understand the purpose of each. He reached a chamber larger than the others, its floor covered with golden tiles. A soft hum filled the air, stronger than before. As he stepped into the room, the light shifted, forming illusions along the walls. He saw himself walking into a throne room filled with treasure, gold spilling from every corner. The visions were tempting, calling to his human desire for wealth and power. Dan felt a tug in his chest, but remembered Rava's words. This was a test of his heart, not his hands. He turned his back to the illusions, keeping his eyes on the path forward. Slowly, the visions faded, leaving him in the quiet glow of the golden chamber. Relief mixed with pride. He had passed the first test, not by strength or skill, but by resisting temptation. A doorway appeared at the far end of the chamber, hidden until now. Dan moved toward it, feeling both nervous and excited. He understood that every step deeper meant facing more challenges, but he felt ready. The room had acknowledged his choice, guiding him forward. The next corridor was colder, and the golden walls shimmered differently. It was as if the deeper he went, the older the room became, showing the weight of centuries. Dust hung in the air, catching the lantern light in tiny sparkling motes. Dan's heart beat steadily. He felt both awe and caution, knowing the throne room's trials were not over. As he walked, he noticed faint carvings of humans standing beside aliens, working together, sharing knowledge, and learning from each other. He realized that the empire which built this place valued cooperation and understanding. Strength alone was not enough. The room demanded wisdom, courage, and respect. Finally, Dan reached a larger set of golden doors. These were more ornate than the first, carved with patterns that seemed alive. His hand hovered over the surface, feeling the warmth beneath the cold gold. Beyond these doors lay the central chamber, the heart of the throne room. He paused, taking a deep breath. The journey inside had tested his patience, focus, and restraint. Every corridor, every chamber, and every carving had been part of the trial. He knew that the hardest challenges were still ahead. Dan whispered to himself, steadying his thoughts. I am ready. I will face whatever comes next. I will not fail. The golden doors before him began to shimmer faintly, almost as if acknowledging his presence. The throne room awaited, full of mystery and challenge. With courage in his heart, Dan stepped forward, ready to uncover the secrets that lay beyond. Dan stepped through the golden doors and entered a hall unlike any he had seen before. The room stretched wide and high, with walls covered in gold that shimmered as if alive. Light danced across the surface, creating patterns that shifted like water. In the center of the hall, a pedestal rose from the floor, and on it lay objects of gold, jewels, and artifacts of every kind. The air was warm and heavy, carrying a faint hum that seemed to come from the room itself. Dan's heart pounded. This was the first true test of the throne room. The legends had said that those who entered would face illusions, temptations, and challenges designed to measure their worth. The objects before him were beautiful beyond words. Gold cups, carved statues, shining crowns, and glowing orbs filled the pedestal. The light reflected into his eyes, making him feel dizzy with wonder. He took a cautious step forward. A soft voice filled the room, echoing around the golden walls. "Choose, human. Take what you desire. Claim what you deserve." Dan froze. His fingers itched to reach for the treasures. Every instinct told him to take something, to hold a piece of history and power in his hands. But he remembered Rava's warning: do not give in to greed. Observe, learn, and resist. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, focusing on his heart. He imagined the people who had built this place. They had created beauty not for one individual, but for all who came after them. This was a test of character, not strength. Dan stepped back from the pedestal and opened his eyes. The voice spoke again, softer this time. "Few have the courage to resist," it said. "Many have failed because they could not turn away from desire. Are you human enough to see without taking?" Dan's chest rose and fell quickly. His mind raced with thoughts of treasure, fame, and recognition. But he shook his head. "I came here to understand, not to take," he whispered. "I will not let greed guide me." The hall seemed to respond. The golden walls pulsed faintly, and the objects on the pedestal shimmered and then slowly faded into the background. The warmth of the room shifted to a calm, steady light, and the hum became gentle, almost welcoming. Dan felt a sense of relief and pride. He had passed the first trial, not by force or skill, but by choice. The golden walls began to shift, forming a new pathway at the far end of the hall. Dan could see another corridor opening, bathed in soft golden light. He moved toward it, aware that each step deeper into the throne room would bring new challenges. He felt ready, but also cautious, knowing that the tests ahead might be even harder. As he walked, he noticed that the carvings along the walls had changed. They now showed humans and aliens working together, solving problems, sharing knowledge, and creating inventions. The room seemed to be teaching him a lesson. True strength was not in taking, but in understanding, respecting, and learning from the world around you. Dan paused to study one carving. It showed a human holding out a hand to help an alien rise from the ground. The human's face was calm, steady, and confident. The alien looked grateful and trusting. Dan realized that this was part of the trial too. The throne room was measuring his heart, his choices, and his understanding of what it meant to be human. A sudden sound echoed through the hall. It was soft, like the rustle of wings or the whisper of wind. Dan turned and saw a faint golden figure in the distance. It appeared to be an illusion, a shadow of someone who had once walked these halls. The figure moved gracefully, beckoning him forward. It was tempting, as if calling him to follow and claim the treasures he had resisted. Dan's pulse quickened. He felt fear and curiosity mixed together, but he remembered his promise to himself and Rava's words. He did not move toward the figure. Instead, he focused on the path forward, leaving the illusion behind. The figure slowly faded, and the hall grew silent, the golden light steady and clear. He continued down the corridor, feeling more confident with each step. The first trial had tested his heart and his desire, and he had passed. He knew that more challenges awaited, but he also understood something important. Being human meant facing temptation, recognizing it, and making the right choice even when it was difficult. As he walked deeper into the throne room, Dan felt a mixture of awe and determination. The golden halls held wonders beyond imagination, but they also demanded respect and wisdom. He was ready to face the next trial, knowing that courage alone would not be enough. Only understanding, patience and strength of heart would carry him forward. The path ahead shimmered in golden light, leading him to the next chamber, where the throne room would continue its test of human character, mind, and spirit. Dan stepped into the next chamber and immediately felt a chill in the air. The golden light from the previous halls faded slightly, replaced by a soft, silvery glow. The walls were carved with mirrors, reflecting not just his image, but shifting shapes that reminded him of faces he had known. The room felt alive, humming quietly as if it was breathing. He knew instinctively that this was no ordinary corridor. He walked slowly, feeling the weight of history pressing around him. As he advanced, the reflections in the mirrors began to move. They no longer showed him alone. Dan saw scenes from his past moments he remembered vividly and moments he had tried to forget. He saw himself as a child, falling from a tree, scraping his knee, and crying in pain. Then he saw the first time he had felt failure, losing a game that he had trained for weeks to win. A soft voice filled the chamber, echoing from all directions. Remember who you are, human. Face what you have carried. Learn from what you have felt. Dan swallowed hard. The room was not trying to scare him. It was testing him. Every memory was a challenge, asking him to face his fears and mistakes honestly. He could feel the golden walls vibrating faintly as if they were waiting for his response. The next memory appeared, showing him arguing with a friend and failing to apologize. The reflection of the friend's disappointed eyes made Dan flinch. He realized the trial was not about punishment but understanding. It was about accepting his past, learning from it, and showing growth. Dan took a deep breath and whispered aloud, "I remember. I see my mistakes. I accept them. I will learn from them and do better." The chamber responded immediately. The mirrors shimmered and softened, no longer showing judgment but reflection. He felt a weight lift from his shoulders, as if the room acknowledged his honesty. As he moved deeper, the memories became more personal and challenging. He saw moments of fear, hesitation, and lost opportunities. Each one tested his courage to face the truth about himself. Dan walked slowly, confronting every memory without turning away. He spoke quietly to himself, reminding himself that humans grow stronger by accepting their experiences, not denying them. A memory appeared of a loved one he had lost long ago. The image was clear and lifelike, the eyes filled with warmth and sadness. Dan felt a pang of grief, but he did not step back. He remembered that the room was testing his heart. He whispered, "I will carry your memory, and it will guide me. I will not let grief control my choices." The chamber shifted again, and Dan found himself surrounded by reflections of people he had helped. He saw small acts of kindness moments when he had stood for others, shared knowledge, and protected someone from harm. The room seemed to respond with warmth and light. He understood that the trial was not only about facing weakness, but also recognizing strength and goodness within himself. Dan's steps grew steadier. The memories no longer felt like threats. They were lessons, showing him who he had been and who he could become. He realized that the throne room did not simply test humans for bravery or greed. It tested their character, their ability to face truth, and their willingness to grow. At the far end of the chamber, a golden door appeared, glowing faintly. Dan approached it, feeling calm yet alert. The room had taught him something important. To succeed in this place, he must remain true to himself. Strength alone would not be enough. Wisdom, honesty, and courage of heart were what mattered most. Before stepping through the door, he paused and looked back at the silvery chamber. Every reflection had faded, leaving only his own image. He smiled slightly, knowing he had faced the trial with honesty. The chamber seemed to hum softly, almost as if it were pleased. Dan pushed the golden door open and stepped into the next hall. The air felt warmer again, and the golden light returned, brighter than before. He knew that he had passed the trial of memory. He carried with him not just lessons from the past, but confidence and understanding that would guide him through the challenges ahead. As he walked forward, he whispered to himself, "I am human. I remember, I learn, and I will continue. This room cannot break me. It can only teach me." The throne room awaited him further ahead, full of challenges yet to come. Dan's journey had taught him patience, courage, and self-reflection. He felt ready for the trials that would test not only his mind, but his heart. Dan pushed open the final golden door and stepped into a hall that took his breath away. The room was enormous, its ceiling lost in shadows far above. Golden light reflected from the walls, pillars, and floor, making everything shimmer as if the air itself was filled with tiny stars. In the center of the room sat the throne of gold, larger and more magnificent than Dan had imagined. Its surface glowed softly, alive with a quiet power. The throne seemed empty, yet it radiated presence. Dan felt a vibration through the floor, almost as if the room itself acknowledged his arrival. Every instinct in his body told him that this was the heart of the throne room, the place where the ancient empire had placed its ultimate test. He knew the trials he had faced so far were preparing him for this moment. A voice, soft but firm, echoed throughout the hall. "You have come far, human. You have resisted temptation, faced your memories, and shown courage of heart. Now you must answer. Do you seek to rule?" Dan stopped and looked at the throne. The gold reflected light in dazzling patterns, and the air around it shimmered with energy. Many humans would have reached out for the seat, eager to claim power, wealth, or glory. But Dan remembered every lesson from the rooms behind him. Strength alone was not enough. Greed could destroy even the strongest human. He shook his head. "I do not seek to rule," he said quietly. "I came here to learn, to understand, and to face the trials. I do not need a throne to prove my worth." The golden light around the throne pulsed softly, as if responding to his words. The voice spoke again. "Few have answered with truth. Many have tried to claim what is not theirs. Do you understand the responsibility that comes with power?" Dan nodded. "I understand. Power is not only for the one who sits above others. True leadership is in guiding, helping, and protecting. It is not in taking what is golden or beautiful for yourself alone. It is in standing with others, not above them." A warm, golden glow filled the hall. The throne seemed to shine brighter, and the hum of the room became soothing. Dan felt a calm energy surrounding him. The throne of gold was not demanding obedience or submission. It was recognizing the wisdom and humility in his choice. Dan stepped closer, but he did not sit. He circled the throne, examining the intricate carvings on its arms and back. Each detail told a story of rulers, allies, battles, and victories. Yet, the carvings also showed the importance of unity, trust, and respect. He realized that the throne's power was not in commanding others, but in inspiring those who were worthy to stand together. The voice spoke once more, echoing softly through the hall. "You have seen what many could not. You have learned that courage is not in strength alone. You have understood that wisdom, patience, and humility are the marks of true greatness. You may take what you have learned and return to your people." Dan bowed slightly before the throne. He felt a mix of awe and gratitude. This hall, this golden seat, had tested him in ways no one else could. It had shown him not just the power of the ancient empire, but the strength of human character. He knew now that humans could succeed where others might fail because of their courage, compassion, and intelligence. He walked toward the exit, leaving the throne of gold behind. The hall shimmered as he moved, but the warmth in his chest stayed. Every step he took was guided by the lessons of the trials. and every memory reminded him of the responsibility that came with understanding. He did not need to claim the throne to feel its significance. Its power had been in teaching, not possessing God. As he reached the final corridor leading back to the surface, he paused and looked back. The golden hall seemed to bow in acknowledgement. Its hum soft and comforting. Dan smiled, feeling the weight of history and the honor of having faced the throne room with honesty and courage. He whispered to himself, "This room is not mine to take. It is mine to learn from. Humans will remember, and we will grow stronger for it." With that, Dan stepped into the light of the corridor beyond, ready to return to the desert and the people waiting for news of the Forbidden's throne room. The lessons he had learned would guide him, shaping not only his actions, but the way humans would be seen on this world. The throne of gold remained behind, silent yet alive, a symbol of wisdom, humility, and the ultimate test of character. Dan had passed its trials, proving that human courage, intelligence, and heart could succeed where others had failed. Dan stepped out of the golden corridor and into the cool desert air. The sun was low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the dunes. The journey through the throne room had changed him. He no longer felt only excitement and curiosity. He carried with him understanding, wisdom, and the quiet pride of having faced a challenge few could endure. As he walked toward his ship, he saw a group of locals waiting on a nearby dune. Among them was Rova, standing tall with her staff in hand. Her eyes widened when she saw him, and for a moment she seemed unsure if he had survived. Then, relief and respect filled her expression. "You returned," Rava said softly. "I did not think it was possible." The throne room has not seen a visitor in centuries who left unchanged. Dan smiled. "I have returned, not because I claimed the throne, but because I understood it. It tested me in ways I could never have imagined. I learned that power is not about taking or ruling, but about knowing when to act and when to listen. The throne room does not belong to one person. It belongs to all who are willing to face themselves." Rava nodded slowly, absorbing his words. "You have done more than survive. You have passed its trials with wisdom. Humans are often underestimated, but you have shown courage, patience, and heart. That is why you return." Other locals stepped closer, their eyes full of curiosity and admiration. They had heard the stories, feared the room, and believed it to be impossible to conquer. Yet here was a human who had not only entered, but had returned with his mind and spirit intact. Dan looked around at the desert, feeling the vastness and quiet strength of the land. He realized that the throne room was a test not only of character, but of understanding the world beyond oneself. Every challenge, every illusion, every memory had taught him a lesson. Lessons that would shape him, and through him, others. He knelt and drew a line in the sand with his hand, a small mark to remember this moment. The desert seemed to hum softly, almost as if acknowledging his achievement. The throne room remained, hidden beneath the dunes, golden and silent, awaiting the next seeker brave enough to face its trials. "You face temptation, fear, and memory itself," Rava said. "What will you do with what you have learned?" Dan looked at the horizon, the sky glowing with shades of orange and purple. "I will share it," he said. "Not the gold, not the throne, but the lessons. Humans can be brave, intelligent, and compassionate. We can face challenges others cannot, not because we are stronger, but because we learn, adapt, and act with heart. That is the real treasure of this place." Rava smiled, a gentle warmth in her eyes. "Then you return not only as a human, but as a teacher, a guide. You carry the throne room's wisdom, and through you, others may see what it truly values." Dan stood tall, feeling a sense of calm and purpose. He had faced the forbiddens, resisted temptation, and confronted his own heart. The golden halls had tested him, but he had emerged wiser and stronger. He knew that humans were capable of more than the legends suggested, and this knowledge would guide his steps for the rest of his life. As the sun dipped below the dunes, Dan prepared to leave. The ship waited, engines humming softly, ready to carry him to new worlds. But he glanced back once, toward the golden chamber hidden beneath the desert. The throne room shimmered faintly in his memory, a reminder of courage, humility, and wisdom. He whispered quietly, "Thank you. I understand now." The locals watched him depart, inspired by what they had witnessed. For the first time, humans were seen not as intruders or outsiders, but as beings capable of greatness, intelligence, and heart. Dan's journey had changed not only himself, but the way others would see his people for generations to come. The desert swallowed the footprints behind him, leaving only the memory of his courage. The throne room of gold waited silently beneath. The sand, alive with lessons, ready for those who dared to enter and prove themselves worthy. Dan had returned, and through him, humanity had left its mark.